Right, look at this. It's all very nice, isn't it? A nice sofa. Welcome to everyone, and thanks for coming in to talk about this very exciting panel about new technology. Saying that, I'll get my book where I wrote down all the questions. I didn't use technology at all. So, we had a discussion about what we were going to talk about on the phone, and originally it was going to be what's the metaverse? And we decided that we would actually drop that from the title. And I wondered if you could talk me through, each of you, a little bit about why we had that conversation, why we felt it was better to go down this sort of AR, XR route.
If I thought I knew what the definition of the metaverse was when I got on the plane yesterday, by the time I got to London, the definition would have been outdated already. The fact is that we look at the metaverse not as a location, but as a set of experiences. And the set of experiences that you will have in the metaverse is something which is still coalescing. There isn't a strictly, well-defined version of what that's going to be, and it might be different from every organization. So for me to tell you what the metaverse experience should be for you will be different than what the metaverse experience should be for our fans. Every sport is different, every fan base is different. So, to take the metaverse out of the equation made more sense for a more general audience where I would just be telling you what was important to me, and that didn't feel like a good use of your time.
That's great, thanks.
For me, it meant everything, which meant that it didn't really mean anything. So because I couldn't really come up with an objective definition, which I'm sure there is no objective definition in the market. So at least from Unity's perspective, we are already in the metaverse, and it's just basically a sliding scale of how metaversey you want to be. And effectively, it's the combination of virtual and the physical, which we're already living in. So to me, there is no single discrete destination or definition of the metaverse.
And Drew?
What they said. No, I suppose my perspective is we get a bit excited about labelling things, don't we? We have to put everything in a box or pigeonhole it and tell us exactly what it is and exactly how we should use it. The beauty about the metaverse actually is we don't know. Could be really good, could be great, will be a different way of experiencing sport. Let's just try it and see what it turns into.
Yeah, because we were talking backstage, and it really is one of these things that can mean nothing to everyone or everything to no one. It's really difficult to put your finger on it, and I think from a sport perspective, there's so many different things that what you've said, you focus on something, and then you can really sort of thrive in that area. And Rami, UFC have been doing lots and lots, always been at the forefront of technology and innovation. What made you step sort of quite heavily, if you like, into this sort of world of immersive and new technology?
Sure. Well, I think the easy answer is that because we can. There are some structural advantages to the sport of mixed martial arts that make it easier for us to do some things with immersive technologies than some others. Two in particular. The entire playing surface that we operate inside of is like less than 750 square feet or 250 square meters. That's larger than both of the first two apartments that I lived in. And so you can capture what goes on inside of a very small amount of space much easier than you can on a football pitch or basketball court. There's also only two competitors, there's no stick and there's no ball. So there are some things that we can do that might not be quite so simple, and the technology might not be ready for some other sports that they are for us. That's because we can. The second reason is because we should, and that has to do with the demographics of our fan base. We have the youngest median fan age of any of the major North American sports, and our sport is entirely global. And so we know who our fans are, and we know what they're going to want when it comes to this younger demographic. We know where that's trending, and so when it comes to immersive technologies like the metaverse, if you could define it, this is something that the people who we know of as being at the younger end of the spectrum are going to ask from us. But I think that the most important reason is not because we can or because we should, it's because we must. And the UFC has an ethos that we're first. We believe that we should be first, and that it doesn't say followers behind us, it says leaders. That's what we do. And so when there's something out there in the world that we can be at the forefront of, that it's imperative that we do so.
Thank you. And Drew, again, Liverpool FC are doing a lot in this space. Again, very innovative and good. I'm a Liverpool fan. So I wanted to know more. Can you tell us more about some of your plans, and in particularly some of the work around LFC Heroes, because I think that's it's very progressive, especially in the Premier Leagues.
Yeah, and arguably controversial as I experienced. But I think first thing I'd say, I'd pick up on that point. I think we also have a responsibility to our fans to enter these worlds because we know how important sport is. We know what it does for mental health, what it does for your physical health, what it does for communities, and so. For us as a club, 1 billion fans worldwide, 700 million fans worldwide, whatever the latest reports say, at the end of the day, we want to give them an experience. And if this technology and this world enables us to give them that experience and take the authenticity of a live sports game, the authenticity of football to them wherever they are in the world, that's absolutely something we should be leading on. And we shouldn't be shy of that. And actually, so to that point, why did we try LFC Heroes? We could have sat on the sidelines and just commented on what everyone else says about NFTs, or we could have sat on the sideline and just saw what others did. But we wanted to know what it actually took to create a series of NFTs, what it actually takes to sell them, what it actually takes to market them, what it actually takes to understand who buys them. And you can't do that unless you're in it, and you have to be on the pitch in order to play the game. So we had to be in the NFT world in order to understand that particular world. We learned a lot from it. We got some things wrong, we got some things right. We've got an audience that we didn't have before. We've got a sense of where NFTs might play in our ecosystem, and actually they're not things to be scared of. So it was a real good test and learn for us, and actually, the best thing is outside of the Legends games that we do for our foundation, it's the biggest earner for our foundation ever done. So raising money for charity is also a great thing.
Perfect. That's true. Tian, we're seeing a lot of lines blurring around gaming and sport, and esports sort of in the middle there, bringing them both together. And Unity are a massive in all of those. And some of the stuff you've been doing, either through partnerships on your own, and we obviously we have a relationship within the two companies. Can you tell a bit more about what you're doing? I believe you've got some slides that we can put up. So if we could.
So I will first just give an overall general idea of what Unity is real quick. For those of you who don't know Unity, we started as a game engine. We have a really powerful real-time 3D engine that many people have used for other purposes. So my role here is to build the sports organization within the game engine company, doing things to effectively reinvent the way that fans and the world consumes sports. So I have a few slides to kind of share with you the vision of what we're trying to build and what we mean by really reinventing consumption. So here, what I'm trying to show is that the future of sports consumption is no longer just going to be pure consuming in a linear 2D basis. You're actually seeing here the future of sports where consumers can have full agency of time, space, control. And to prove that this is not a video game, you see those actual fighters, George St. Pierre and Kevin Lee, actually playing around with their volumetric 3D figure. So this is what I mean. We're not trying to completely replace 2D linear broadcast, but rather you have to grow with the next generation of sports fans who are getting younger and more socially and globally diverse. So you have to follow them. Leveraging the same technology, imagine if you are able to not only watch and consume the content, but actually being able to annotate it, edit it, craft it into your own personal content to share with your friends. This is an example of, wow, well, we're already in 3D, so why don't we just annotate it? Imagine what it means for broadcasters, pundits, or social media influencers if they want to host their own. Obviously, sports has a lot to do with stats, and many of the sessions that we heard this week from leaders is about the importance of stats, and not just about the gathering and consolidation of data, but actually how do you use that data in a meaningful way to create compelling experiences that generate additional fan engagement or makes the data more meaningful and contextual. So what you're seeing here is at the end of the fight, I'm just going to wait until the stats page pops up. And it shows you the stats at the end. Now imagine you miss that particular takedown, so you go back. It's all linked. So utilizing all of those steep stats together, this is us envisioning what the future of highlights might be. Instead of just watching short-form videos, they're all interactive, and you use your familiar swipe right and swipe down. This is envisioning, the social aspect of putting together a watch party. So what you're seeing here is all of your friends together in the same party, and those hovering icons represent you and your friends. So you can actually join them, watch from their perspective, and actually feel like you have a presence in the same room. And of course, this has great implications for sponsorships and advertising, the ability to change your environments once you're in a 3D world. So this is us pretending that we created a Fight Island scene in the background. And of course, the ability for dynamic advertising. So this is just a really, really quick a few examples of what we envision the future of consumption looks like with real examples, and to show that it's not just a term or a pipe dream, we're actually working on it.
You convinced me. I think we should do something together, UFC and Unity.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting, because where we see this, however you want to call it, evolving technology is, if you're a sports fan, you want to be at the event, you want to feel that experience, but it's not achievable. Some people, if you take, some people will never ever go, for whatever reasons, tickets or ability or funds, to go to a Premier League match. And the next best thing is the large screen. So how can we use these new technologies to bridge that gap? And I think there's a lot of space to play in, both as a broadcaster and sports clubs, and obviously the work you're doing with Unity. But we can get a bit carried away sometimes in the technology. It's great, it looks really good, but there must be some of the I guess, more complex things organizationally as we move into this. And I don't know if, because you're quite far ahead, Rami, have there been changes organizationally that you've had to sort of deal with?
Yeah, well, so the position that I sit in, I think, is somewhat unique, which is that, I head up research and development, but it's not a department, meaning it's not like a functional group. We view innovation as a resource, not as a destination, which means that we are available to everybody across the organization so that innovation can be a part of everything that they do. And I think that, when you talk about organizational structure, the thing that is often missing when it comes to a person who has an innovation mandate is trust. Because fundamentally, the technologies we're talking about are disruptive, and that's uncomfortable, especially for people who have been doing the job for a long time. And so when there's an innovation person inside of an organization, a lot of times when they have a mandate, it's for them to lead innovation. And so they'll go to whoever the department head is, and the department head looks at them and says, who's this person who's about to tell me how to do my job? And instead, what you need to do is build a trusting relationship between the two of them. And so our group has the perspective of, we have no ego and we claim no credit. That means that if we help another group achieve something, if we can help them innovate, the person who ends up in the press release is the head of that department, not me. I don't ever want my name to be the one in lights, because it's a thing that they're going to end up owning. There's the expression like lead, follow, or get out of the way. We actually look at those as three different stages. First, we lead. So we'll have people who come to us and they'll say, so what should we do here? Like, what are we going to do about NFTs? Is that something that's relevant to us? And so we'll help kind of lead the conversation and help them understand what their options are. We'll even help them with some implementation. But then we follow, and we're just there to help them execute. We're not going to take over. We're not going to be the ones in charge. It's their project. And then we get out of the way. And the getting out of the way is often the hardest thing for people in innovation to do, because their bosses are going to measure the success or failure of their job by the number of times that they get quoted in various articles. And that is not what we're about. And so structurally, I think we're set up for success because of the faith and the trust that we have from the organizations, the pieces of the organization that we work with, but also from our senior executive leadership who understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish, so that we don't need to be grubbing for quotes or trying to get our name in lights. The point is the organization innovates. The success of that is seen in the products that we put out in the marketplace. And if we're successful at it, then the people who need to know who did it will need to know, and I don't need to be the one who kind of gets all the credit for it. So it's a difficult thing to structure because you need to have people who can gain the faith and credit of the people who they're working with, and you need a senior executive leadership who understands what the purpose of innovation is, which is not to be seen to do things, it's to actually do things.
Thank you. Drew, do you want to come back on that?
The bit I was going to build on there, and one of the things that I'm very keen on from our club perspective is not falling into that strategy execution gap. And I think sometimes with innovation, it's kind of, oh, that's a strategy thing, we haven't got to work out how to execute against it. And it's absolutely wrong, because all that happens then is we have some great ideas and we don't do anything with them because we haven't worked out how to put them live. So I think one of the big things that we're trying to do is make sure that actually everybody plays a part in both the strategy and the execution, because you can't have one without the other. And I think we also have, there's a tendency, isn't there, when people talk about innovation to think it's got to be this massive thing, we've got to go and build a space rocket because we're innovative, and it's got to be, actually you can innovate on some really small, practical, tangible things that make a big difference. Innovation doesn't have to be this massive, complicated thing that takes 18 months to come up with or whatever, and actually you can do small things, and small things everybody plays a part in the organisation, so it's kind of a big mantra of ours.
That's brilliant. I think we all know, if in the sports industry, that fans can be maybe a little bit a tendency to resist change. I always remember when the first time we talked about augmented reality, and someone said, no, someone might hold their phone up in front of me, and Man City banned iPads. But how do you square that now with trying to sort of get Gen Z on board, and whatever gen we're on now, I lose. I'm Gen old. But so could you give us a sort of a bit of an insight into what you're looking at, Tian?
Sure. I think it's important to understand that we're not simply trying to convert or force fan behaviors to change. We are simply adapting to what the fan is currently asking for. So the way that we do it is not necessarily to be like, force you to interact. Some people just prefer to lean back and consume and experience. That's perfectly fine. But it's more about the ability to be flexible. So I'm going to give you both. You can lean back if you want to, but you can also engage. And the important thing to take away here is that I understand that the next generation of sports fans want to engage. So to Rami's point earlier, you must, otherwise you fall behind. So it's not necessarily us trying to forcefully get these fans to change their behavior. Certain things will not change, but it's about adding value over time that completely makes you attuned and aligned to the people you're trying to serve.
Yeah, Drew.
It's interesting you say there about, appealing to everybody in different ways, because one of the things that we know is our fan base. You get the hardcore football fan, it's the only thing they care about, it's the biggest interest outside of their work or their home life, and that's it. But there are many fans that have got multiple interests. And how do you actually bring them something that means that second screen experience is really good? I mean, how many of us have got kids who seemingly can consume information from 4 different devices all at once and convince you they're doing their homework, right? It's like so actually giving other opportunities to experience something in other ways is critical for different generations.
Yeah, I think you have to figure out what the product mix is, because if you can show fans something that's not a toy, if you can show them something that really enhances the way they watch the sport, it doesn't matter how old they are or if they're traditionalists. They will be in favor of things that make their viewing experience that much more enjoyable. And the inherent conservatism that we have about trying not to alienate any of our fans at all costs, I think comes from, in some ways, it's an apprehension to look at the work that we're doing and feel and talk about it with full-throated confidence that says, no, this is for everybody. Like, we're not just making toys for kids. We're going to do something that no matter how old you are, I mean, there's some technophobes, and you do have to bring some of them along if you're going to use a platform that they may not be familiar with. But for the most part, if you're inserting something into broadcast or into your viewing experience that is truly an enhancement, there's nobody, no matter which age, which is going to say that it was a bad addition and they wish that it went away.
Yeah, I think so as broadcasters and clubs and companies, we're really moving away from that broadcast, if you like, the one-to-many, to a one-to-one approach. And I guess as long as you're adding something to the output and it's a choice, then you can always bring people along. You know, good luck getting my dad's transistor radio off him when he's at the stadium to listen to Radio 5 Live. So we've seen a lot, and you will have seen a lot this week, about new technology in sport, new opportunities around metaverse, NFTs and things. I'll go to each of you, actually. Have you seen anything that's really inspired you in this space that you kind of think, oh, I wish we'd done that, that looks really good, or just generally sort of caught your interest? Rami, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a good answer, which is actually a terrible answer, which is that we're still trying to catch up to the first down line in football. Like in American football, they added that yellow line on the broadcast, and I took my nephews a few years ago to a Seattle Seahawks game. It was the first game that they'd ever seen in person. And we were sitting up there, and they asked me, where's the yellow line? Because they were sitting in the stadium, and they're like, well, where is that thing? Right? And because it was so transformative, because it meant that you understood something about the game that you didn't before, because it wasn't a toy, and because it was so good that it meant that something that we put in the virtual world, people started demanding in the real world. Like, that's the benchmark when we talk about something like augmented reality, is that you want it to augment your own reality. You want it to be there all the time. You don't just want it to be there when you're watching on screen. But it's a terrible example because that technology is 20 years old. And it's still the best example that I can think of. But when we come up with...
Might not work in VAR, just putting it out.
When we come up with a new enhancement, you know, the thing that we're judged against is, yeah, well, but it's not the first down line. And so I feel like that's the challenge, is that, you know, there are some success stories that we point to in the industry, and they're so good that the other things that we're doing, they do suffer a little bit by comparison. So short answer, I wish I created the first down line.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think you really hit on something with, you know, AR. It does what it says on the tin. It should be augmenting your experience, not replacing it. John, anything that's really caught your eye?
I'm also trying to come up with a decent answer, but it probably sounds pretty terrible.
Oh, no, it won't to me. They're all going to be better than mine.
I feel that working inside Unity, I am constantly awed by the stuff that's actually coming from within the Unity environments, just because the millions of Unity developers and creators and the crazy things that they do with our engine. Part of it is obviously in sports, that's super cool, but some other things in other industries as well, in aerospace, etc. So I would say it's actually just stuff that we're currently doing.
Yeah. I'm not surprised, because you do everything, like the Nestle of gaming engines. Drew, anything you've seen?
I'm not sure, I'll be honest. I've got an answer to that. I think, well, actually, the short answer is no, I haven't. But the thing I do genuinely believe is if we can use this technology and we can take the experience of being a live sports event, you know, seeing live football around the world to a global fan base, that will shift the experience. Like that's got to, you know, that would be my dream outcome for my time in working in football. Have I seen anything that gets us close to that? Sorry, Unity, maybe not yet. I don't know.
We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll have to give it a try.
Yeah.
Well, that's while we're on that, I guess there's a big thing. Using this technology for more globalization, if you like. Is there anything that you've got down the line looking at that, how you extend the reach of LFC?
Yeah, there's loads of stuff that we're looking at, and we're trying to think about ways in which we can bring, as I say, the experience of you know, walking to a stadium, the experience of, taking your seat, the experience of hearing You'll Never Walk Alone, the experience of, last-minute goals. Like we're always looking at ways in which how do we bring that across the different channels that we've got to our global fans? We're going to continue to identify all of those different opportunities. Probably like most clubs. How do we build the virtual reality of the stadium? How do we is there some connected merchandise that we can actually explore so people feel the experience, a moment in the game when they're 3,000 miles away. So all of those things we're exploring. But I'm sure we'll trial some things, and I'm sure in due course there'll be more products that we launch.
That's great. I'm going to next. I'd like to know what most excites you about what's out there. There's so much, and we've sort of talked very difficult to pin down. So I'm looking at augmented reality glasses and XR and things like that. That really, I see a great future in that, and I didn't know. Is there anything that really sort of floats your boat, if you like, moving forward as we move into this brave new world, right?
Yeah, so every time you're talking about a new method of experiencing it, there's so many different underlying technologies that you already have to have mastered before you can make that sing. And so that's the thing that's most interesting to me, is that there's not any one thing that we're trying to achieve that is going to be in and of itself the thing. It requires mastery over any number of new technologies and services that we're going to have to figure out how to use. So if you're thinking about augmented reality, where we were talking before, and Tian showed the slides of that demonstration, so all of that hinges on volumetric capture, for example. So to be able to get to a truly immersive, call it metaverse experience, you also have already had to master, call it, something like volumetric capture and dynamic audio and. And so it's this like kind of constantly unfolding set of technologies, and we have to keep learning along the way how to use them for our purposes. But it will take new technologies, and that's something which I think is exciting about the space, is that we're not going to be subject and held to the stuff that happened in the past, because we're not trying to recreate our existing broadcast but do it in the metaverse. That doesn't make any sense. We should be doing things in a different way, and therefore a better way. Otherwise, why are we doing it? And so we're not going to keep using the same old tools. You cannot drive a car with a buggy whip. We're going to have to figure out what are the things that are necessary to produce this brand new experience that none of our fans have ever seen or felt before, and to do it in a way that makes them want to do it from now on and forever, so that there's no going back. There is no, okay, that was cool, but I'm going to go back and do it the old way. We want to create something that's so good that it becomes the de facto way of experiencing the sport.
Yeah, true. Kind of like can't go back to not smartphones anymore.
Right.
But there are two. I think there's a second, or a parallel running part of the innovation agenda here, because we can innovate in the technology, we can innovate in delivering an experience for fans, we can come up with these new great immersive experiences. But we have to innovate our business models. We have to test and learn a different way in which, the business of football actually operates, because otherwise all we're going to do is take some technology and say, let's just deliver the same broadcast feed through new technology. That's kind of more of the same. So
yeah, and at great expense too, right?
Massive expense.
Yeah,
so
coming up with this new stuff isn't cheap. And so, yeah, there is definitely a need to rethink the business model so that it takes advantage of some of the new things that the technology allows for, but also replaces things that we might have to jettison because they don't fit the new paradigm, right? They're stuck in the old way.
And accept that that's a slow burn, which, my peer who runs commercial, my CEO, will consistently say we need more money from technology, and they're right, but actually some of this new technologies takes time to build that money. It takes time to build that business model. The business cases that come across my desk almost every day about how the metaverse can make us millions of pounds. It's like, well, it's not going to tomorrow, is it? It's not. Let's face some reality here. And I think that's where I think we also have to test and learn this stuff.
100%. You have to take your time.
One thing that we haven't touched upon, which we are certainly seeing in the broadcasting industry, is the skills gap. It's very different skills in terms of building an experience like that than we would have as a broadcaster. And I don't know if you address that, or is it just by sort of osmosis that people come in? Because we will be, as an industry, it's difficult. People are retiring and people aren't coming into traditional broadcasting. And I just didn't know if you had any problems like that, you had to address that. Rami?
Too early to tell. I mean, like the sea change hasn't occurred yet. So, I hear what you're saying about the attrition that exists inside of traditional broadcast technologies, and there aren't younger people who are coming in to replace like the industry veterans. But what we're looking at in the future is something where a lot of the people who are in those positions might be made obsolete. And the people who replace them, like you say, will have entirely different skill sets. And perhaps that's the way that you can create this generational evolution, where it's not about training younger people on how to use a chyron. It's about getting people who have been programming since they were 5 to start programming for sports broadcast instead of making apps.
I wonder if our whole recruitment model might evolve as well. I mean, certainly, like every other organisation, we've experienced attrition and challenges, since the pandemic and, the big R and all the rest of it. And I think when it comes to some of these new technologies, it doesn't become cost effective for businesses and companies like ours to suddenly say, we're going to go and employ a bunch of people that know how to build these. Actually, we need to pull resource from other means. We need to build ecosystem of partners to actually help build us stuff for us. So I think, how we solve that problem will be different to how we might recruit a developer tomorrow.
I think it'll change. I don't have a doubt that in the very long term that this entire shift in skill set is going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's inevitable. Look at the skill sets that we have today versus like 50 years ago, 30 years ago. It's always going to change based on how just life works. Yeah. And real-time 3D and other immersive interactive technologies, it will absolutely be a more widespread and adopted and utilized technology to cater to the content creation and consuming needs of the future. I think the tricky thing is, to Drew's point, how do you balance that so you don't get ahead of yourself? But I have zero doubt that this is all going to change in the future. Even, assisted refereeing, it's slowly being replaced. It will continuously happen as technology evolves.
In 10 years' time, we'll be doing this in the metaverse.
Yeah, that's it. So we got a couple of minutes. I didn't have any... Either I didn't have any questions, or I don't know what I'm doing with the Slido. So is there any questions from the audience that I have for our panel? Yes.
Just so that I understand, when we had the images up on the slideshow earlier, was that in real time, or was that the ability to watch back?
That was not in real time, but real time is possible.
Okay. Any others? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our panel. Great guests here. I just want to say thank you to you all. And let's see where we go with this. It's, definitely an exciting time for the industry. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.